Anthony Grassi for D2 Ticker here at the Women Leaders in Sports National Convention. Happy to sit down for another small college conversation with the new Director of Athletics at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, Rachel Burleson. Rachel, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's been good to be here.
So as we sit right now, you're here at Women Leaders accepting the D2 Executive of the Year Award.
Yes, sir.
You were also named NACDA AD of the Year. What does that kind of recognition mean, especially during a career transition?
Yeah, I think, regardless of the transition, it was overwhelming. I was completely in awe. I think I've just done a very good job at supporting, putting people around me that are just super supportive and very good at what they do. And it made my job so much easier. And it allowed really great things to happen just because of the competence around me. I think when you add the transition to it, it made it cool timing in a way, right? I got to come into a new institution with these accolades, but it also heightened it, right? Now all of a sudden, this is who I am, and now I've got to prove that I can be this, and building that team around me again and stuff. So it's been really inspiring and exciting and humbling.
You just finished 100 days. We're 100.
I did. Wednesday of last week, October 9th, was 100 days.
So we're 105 days in.
Correct.
To the tenure.
Yeah, good math.
What have been walk you through what the last 100 days have been like? We can talk meetings, kind of different constituents you met with, how you've handled all that on top of kind of getting on board. Yeah.
The last 100 days have been a lot of listening. When I went in for my interview, I had a 100-day plan, and I had, this is what's going to happen when I get the job 2 weeks after, 30 days after, 60 days after. And it's amazing how much of that was true, but also how much of that was not, right? If I go back and I did my little check boxes, and I went back through it, and some of it I would have to say was ongoing, so I didn't complete it, but it was happening. Some of it I just delayed or just wasn't relevant, right? So you take what you think you know about it, but it was really neat to see how much of it was accurate and how much we were able to accomplish and do that. I spent a lot of time listening. It was a lot of time in meetings, a lot of time taking notes, a lot of time trying to process perspectives and different things and different goals that the institution had and that the coaches and staff and student athletes had. I was able to give an assessment to our head coaches, to our administrative staff, and to our student athletes, different assessments, and then being able to put those together and find trends. I think what is so exciting about this institution is how much those things align, right? What the coaches say and what the administrative staff says, what the student athletes say is very much the same, right? There's a lot of the same goals, a lot of the same challenges. And so when you see those things align as quickly, as best as they do, that it gives me a clear path. It gives me an idea to know. And so this past week I've spent kind of giving an executive summary of what the 100 days look like. And then my staff this week is building out what our next 6 months will look at based on that. So I think we've done a lot of listening, a lot of hearing, and I think this next 6 months you'll see a lot more action, right? Now we've got to do something. People are tired of me listening to them. They want to see action. And that's what we'll do over the next 6 months.
When you were at Franklin Pierce, did you have the same process, and how did that onboarding process for you, that first 100 days, shift from what you just went through?
Yeah, I did do the same thing at Franklin Pierce. I think with a lot more ignorance, right? I thought I knew what I knew, and
first time through.
First time through it, I had really grandiose ideas of how this is going to go. I think I learned a lot, good and bad. I think you learn a lot through your failures. But I will say, it was the same idea. It was the same process. I think I had a better idea of what my 100 days would look like this time through. I think also at Pierce, it was so new to everyone. I had replaced an athletic director that had been there for 42 years total in his career. And so it was a new I think there was a lot more anxiety around what that looked like, who I was. I was not from New England. I came from the Midwest. And so coming out from a different area of the country, I think there was a very different feel perhaps than what there is at Embry-Riddle, which I think we did a lot of great things at Pearson. So it worked out. And I think there was a lot to learn for me as well.
How did you go about, what were some of the intentional things you did to succeed a successful athletic director? Because you had at Franklin Pierce, somebody who was there for 40 years, and at Embry-Riddle, John Phillips was very respected director of athletics. Correct. How do you kind of not change, necessarily not full sail, maybe change what they've done, but kind of make those tweaks, given that also those individuals had a lot of respect in the department and at that institution.
Yeah, and in the community.
Yeah.
I've been lucky that both athletic directors that I've replaced had been there for a long time, but also were very good people, right? Very respected. In both situations, I had good conversations with the outgoing athletic director, and it's been a very healthy transition in both instances. So that's been very helpful for me. My job is not to come in and change what they did. Right. Clearly what they did was successful. And so what I can do is just build on that and making sure that I give credit where credit is due, making sure that I honor the tradition of what was built. And change doesn't mean it was wrong. Change just means that we're growing, or that we're going to try something new. And so being able to explain that to the staff. At Embry-Riddle specifically, we have the previous AD before JP is still there. He's a coach of ours. And so having him still on staff is really important for us to continue to build his legacy, build what he's done, right? He built that program, and making sure that we respect that while also moving forward has been a really pointed effort of mine.
Do you tap into those individuals that either were in the chair previously that are still kind of around the community, or in Embry-Riddle's case, that are still in the department?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how do you what do you lean on them for most probably at this point?
I think it's mostly about advice and history, right? Tell me when have we tried this? If we did, why didn't, what happened, or what are things we can change? It's really about the history and continuing to move and see what we've done and what we can change and what we can do. But also with the community, right? Making sure, specifically in Embry-Riddle, who's very connected in the community, introduce me to some people. Let's do this together. And so it's been really good.
So one of the interesting things when you took the job at Embry-Riddle, you said it was a place where we can be successful.
Yep.
I'm curious how you go about evaluating that,
Yeah.
whether for this specific job or potentially other jobs, the criteria, the matrix, the framework through which you evaluate whether a job can be successful or not.
Yeah. The first thing I look at is the institution, right? Is athletics supported? Is the institution in a good place? Is it in a healthy, stable place? Embry-Riddle's enrollment's growing right now. They continue to build on their growth, and they continue to build new buildings. I mean, there's a lot of growth going on at Embry-Riddle, and so the stability is there, the finances are there. Then you look at the support. They just transitioned fully by 2017 to Division II, so they made a commitment very recently, right, to build on athletics, and so all of that shows me that there's opportunity there. And then they've been successful, right? In the short amount of time in Division II, they've been successful. They were very successful in AI. And so they have a history of that. They have a history of winning. So I think, it just comes from having an experience. I think Division II is phenomenal. It's my favorite place to be. And so just being able to have been at other institutions, see what works at Division II, and going to a school that is motivated to be successful, I think is where it comes from, and really being able to come in at a really good time of that transition.
You mentioned D2 being your place. Throughout your career, has that always been your place? And is there a circumstance or a situation maybe where your career path would have been different, or in the future would be different? And kind of what may be those inflection points?
Yeah, so I was a college softball student athlete. I then, when I graduated, I went and coached at a high school. That was what I was always going to do. I found out very quickly that that was not what I wanted to do. And so I then moved, I was 23 years old, moved to Ohio, first time out away from my home, moved 19 hours away at a Division III institution. I was at Kenyon College, and I loved it, immediately loved it. I thought this is phenomenal, it's great. So I left there after 2 years and went to Northwest Missouri State, where I got my master's. I was assistant softball coach there. And that's when I really figured out, as much as I loved Kenyon College, I think it's a phenomenal institution. Division II just had something a little different. I like the balance of Division II. I like that competitiveness, but also the life in the balance, the idea that we're giving kids opportunity. I myself was a first-generation college student. I would have never gone to college had it not been for sport. I mean, sport gave me my entire life. It gave me I got to see the world from the sport of softball. And so I felt at Division II we had a real opportunity to give kids an opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise. And so personally, I felt connected to what the Division II setup is. So it was then very quickly that that's where I wanted to be. That was my aspirations. That's what I wanted to do. I always thought I would be a softball coach, and life takes its turns, and here I am an athletic director, and I haven't looked back. I've really enjoyed being an administrator.
At Embry-Riddle, one of the other kind of positives you said about the opportunity when you took it was that your goal was to be a model Division II athletic department. You were at Franklin Pierce for 7 years. How does what does that look like? What does a model Division II department look like?
Yeah, I think it looks like Embry-Riddle. No.
Okay.
I think for me, it's really about making sure that we have the right people in place, which we do. We have really good people at Embry-Riddle, but people that believe in the Division II makeup, right? That we have an appropriate staffing to make sure that we're giving the experiences to our student athletes that they deserve and that they should have, and then making sure that we are funding it and giving them the community outreach that they deserve. One of the things I told my staff when I very first got there, something I said a lot at Pierce was, I don't want to hear why we can't do something. I want to know how we can do it, right? When we watch University of Texas or when we watch these big power schools, why can't my kids get that same experience, right? It might not be at that level, but it can be the same experience. I can give them something that they can own and that they can love. And so let's find ways to do that. And so for me, a Model Division II, and I will say our D2 ADA has formed a Model II document. And so when you go through that, it really is about how the staffing, the support pieces, even when it comes to the mental health pieces, things like that. What can we do to give them the best experience and the best opportunity to go on and move on in life, which most will be outside of sport, right? And so my job is to get them there, and when they leave, they're confident enough to go for those jobs. They're confident enough to get that. And that's what Division II model looks like to me.
That ability to kind of give somebody the freedom to take a step and be innovative where there's the risk that you make a mistake.
And that's okay.
As a young professional, somebody that's not in your seat,
right.
Can be challenging. So
Yes.
Is it in the instance that you've had, probably most at Franklin Pierce, what does that look like? What does that look like in kind of empowering an individual to take the next step and be innovative?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk like from the staffing point of view, right? So for me, it's about making sure that we're not talking about what you did wrong. It's what happened, right? What let's come up with. And I take it back from when I was coaching. I used to always tell my kids, again, I was softball, when you're running the bases and you're being aggressive, I don't care if you're out. Right? If you're running hard, we're going to make things happen. Now, if you start not using your brain and we start second guessing ourselves, that's when we get out, and that's when I start getting angry, right? Let's be aggressive, work hard, and things will end up happening. And I take that same philosophy as an athletic director. I want my staff to go out, be aggressive, be hard, let's do these, come up with these great ideas, right? And if it doesn't work, that's okay. Let's either bring it back to the table and say, hey, let's tweak this, let's do this, and let's try it again, or oh man, that didn't work. That was kind of silly. Let's do something different. But I think for me, it's just really about empowering them to come up and be creative, because in the real, I am not that. I am not overly creative, but I can see a vision. I can see where people are going with things. And so again, the more my people around me have the support and can do things, the easier it is for me, the better my kids' experience are as our student athletes. And so it's really just making sure that we talk things through. I give them the opportunity to mess up. And when they do, we fix it, and we move on from there. Yeah,
the difference between kind of what the outcome is and what the process to get to the outcome is makes it. We hear a ton of successful coaches talk about that.
Yep.
Your probably most common one is we're having a little bit better every day.
Yep.
You have a good day of practice here, you do a little bit better the next day, and that kind of leads you to that the success that you want.
Yep. And you're going to have a setback in that every now and
then.
And that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to get you out of here on these last two things.
Okay.
What is kind of as you think about your 7 years, what are kind of the biggest things that you will take from what you put in place at Franklin Pierce that you will bring to Embry-Riddle? Yeah.
I think the biggest thing would be the supportive culture, right? Getting people there. I think everybody at Pierce worked so hard for the same reasons, right? There was, I almost describe it, or I do describe it almost as a chip on their shoulder, right? We had something to prove. Everybody was there for a reason. We all knew our student athletes were there for a reason, and let's give them a great experience. And I think for a long time, it's been this, there's this struggle like, oh, we can't do things, and maybe it's financially, whatever that may be, but the fact is our kids deserve us to do things, and so we've got to be creative. We've got to figure out how, we added Division II football, which wasn't overly a popular decision when we did it. And they're doing really well now. We've had really wonderful kids go through there and graduate. And so I think it would be just really building this can-do culture, this culture that trusts everyone. There's trust in everybody. We believe that we're all here. We're supportive, and it just immediately people just start doing better. When people are behind you, it's amazing how quickly. So that's really been a focus, is culture.
A trusting can-do culture.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
So the last question I want to ask you is, what is kind of the biggest challenge that you see or are facing, be it at Embry-Riddle, or Division II at large?
Yeah. I think I would go with the largest thing for me is the larger grant landscape of Division II, but also higher education right now, right? I've finished my dissertation hopefully in March, and so we'll have my doctorate, but the dissertation is strictly around revenue. And how do we get new revenue streams instead of really our net tuition revenue and discount rate and all the fun things that we talk about when it comes to enrollment with the enrollment cliff. And so I would think specifically having been in the Northeast, how do we keep these institutions viable and sustainable? Because they have so much to give the community, right? When an institution's gone, a community loses a massive revenue stream, and people in it. And so really making sure, for me, it's that larger piece. And I think that comes back to the Division II model and why Embry-Riddle. And it's amazing what happens when you have a culture that's growing and doing great things.
Rachel, thank you for sitting down with me.
Yeah.
Very interested to see the implementation of the can-do culture at Embry-Riddle. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.